Why are billionaires in Washington state just so desperate to make you and I pay much higher taxes? This is actually the question that we attempt to answer today, as it really relates to kind of the history-making effort of just regular citizens, just like you and I in Washington state, to now push back against the bloat and waste of abusive and really endlessly wasteful government policies, with 4 statewide initiatives to reduce the tax burden on just regular people who live here. Now, before we get to the greedy billionaires who want you to pay more in taxes, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. It only takes a few seconds. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's going to probably contribute to annoying these billionaires who certainly don't want us putting out videos just like this one. Now, feel free to share this video as well with your friends who may be tempted by the billionaires to vote no on these initiatives. Well, those same billionaires might want to censor us. Until they actually succeed in that effort, we can actually still share the truth about their behavior far and wide so that many more will know the truth. Okay, so now back to Washington state and the 4 initiatives on the ballot this November. Of course, these are the ones which the billionaire class has decided to oppose. Now, I've done stories about these initiatives in the past, but for those unaware of the background, I'm just going to give you a quick recap here. Now, first of all, Washington state has allowed citizen initiatives since a state constitutional amendment was passed back in 1912. It's a long time ago. And number 2, it is not unusual for initiatives to be placed on the ballot in Washington state for a wide variety of subjects. This often has included cutting taxes. Washingtonians have historically been favorable to tax cuts, particularly when they're aware of the waste and the grift associated with how their tax dollars are typically squandered by government. Number 3, this year, however, in just a state first, this is a historical first, voters have an opportunity here to vote on 4 of these initiatives, every one of which is going to reduce their cost of living in Washington state. Now, this volume of simultaneous good government initiatives has never happened before in state history, and it's frankly just unprecedented. I don't think anywhere else in the country either. The group that sponsored and organized these initiatives was Let's Go Washington PAC, sponsored by Brian Haywood. And if you've watched my channel before, you know that I've interviewed Brian Haywood before about this effort. And those interviews can basically be found linked down below, and they're also on my YouTube channel. They have a simple message to the voters of Washington state, and it's very easy to remember. Vote yes, pay less. And I think this resonates with people if they actually hear the message. Now, this brings us to the 4th issue, which is kind of a recap here. This gets to kind of the greedy billionaires of Washington state who basically want all the taxpayers and the lowly peasants of our state, like you and I, to keep paying more in taxes. And these same billionaires, of course, are spending millions of dollars right now, right this minute, projected to probably be somewhere around $30 to $40 million to keep your tax dollars and cost of living as high as they can get it. Now, why would they do this? And who are these guys? So let's get into this. First, let's talk about who the greedy billionaires actually are. I mean, after all, these guys typically jump through hoops with their armies of attorneys and accountants to reduce their own tax exposure. So why do they want you and I to pay more taxes to heat our homes, take more money out of our paychecks, make it more expensive to pay for fuel, or simply prevent us from having access to natural gas to heat our homes or cook our food? Well, when we look at the public records found at the Washington State Public Disclosure Commission, we're going to actually see that the billionaires, Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates, and Nick Hanauer, are 3 of the prominent billionaires who want you to pay higher taxes for incompetent and wasteful government programs. There are more billionaires involved than just this, of course, but these are the highest profile ones actively spending money to hurt you right this minute. Now, why? Now, that's a good question. And it's easy to understand when you see how these billionaires have operated in the recent past. I mean, generally, they use their money, either old or inherited cash, like Nick Hanauer here, or money that they got from high-tech ventures back in the day, like the cash stash that both Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates have accumulated from Microsoft originally. Now, this is good for them. I mean, it's great. And if they just spent their money on philanthropy or other multi-hundred-million-dollar maybe yachts or mansions, nobody would really care. However, these billionaires, just like George Soros or Michael Bloomberg, who also spend their money trying to hurt regular people, these guys, they just seem bored with the humdrum of mansions, yachts, maybe traveling to islands, and then living the high life. I mean, they've all decided instead to get into the empire building business. And it can be very expensive, actually, to manage us peasants out here and the little people who they desperately want to control. So, of course, they've learned over the years that they can more efficiently use less of their own money to change the world directly if they just buy the politicians and then direct government grants to fund their empires, their dreams, and their schemes instead. I mean, Nick Hanauer openly brags about this, and many of these guys recognize that they get to keep more of their billions by making taxpayers, that's you and I, pay for their schemes. Now, this isn't new, but it is rare that we see such naked hypocrisy and kind of nastiness on display at a local level like this in Washington state. So we should be thankful that the mask has slipped off and we see their greed so openly on display. The challenge, I think, that the billionaires and their pet politicians here, like Bob Ferguson, the challenge they have right now is that if these initiatives are approved by voters, it will let the lowly peasants and little people, like you and I again, keep more of their own money and then put billions of dollars that they hope to control, these billionaires hope to control from their perspective, at risk. Now, much of this can actually be squandered on their empire-building operations, and then, of course, it can fund their hardcore leftist projects around the state, which are very expensive and wasteful. And these guys, through their pet politicians, then can essentially control and direct much of this cash flow. Even billionaires can run out of money funding it themselves, and it is so much work for them to try to keep the incompetence and the corruption at an acceptable level of grift and waste. So outsourcing most of their plans and operations onto government grant-funded programs funded by the little people, again, that's you and I and the other suckers who are forced to pay these taxes. Well, then the billionaires here, they get a free pass and the free ride and the glory and recognition from their friends, of course, who are also the tame and unfortunately bought local media. Now, listen, the billionaires in Washington can waste and squander their money on whatever they want. I really don't care, and I suspect most people out there don't really care either. It would be nice, however, if they gave back to the community and sponsored helpful community projects around the state. And some of these guys have even done this in the past. However, maybe it's just something about hubris and greed and then the need to dominate everything around them. But I believe these billionaires basically step over the line when their prime objective is to hurt you and I and basically all the regular people of Washington state who are sick and tired of our tax dollars squandered on stupid stuff with corrupt people. And the only real result that we get is a higher cost of living and more excuses when these tax increases are not enough. Because, just a little hint here, it's never going to be enough. And there are always more taxes on the horizon, and these guys support every single one of them. Now, the most hypocritical part of their multi-million-dollar ad and lawfare campaign is that they have targeted Brian Haywood and a handful of other donors who have funded and helped these initiatives be successful in the first place, with very personal attacks on them, claiming that they're somehow evil and shameful here for wanting to reduce the cost of living for the rest of us. Now, this campaign has actually been absurd on its face since inception, because what we're witnessing is the billionaires of Washington state personally attacking the handful of millionaires who wanted to help the regular people of Washington state pay less in taxes, heating our homes, and bringing more money home in our paychecks. And then the billionaires, of course, now they're angry because the billionaires want your money for their government-funded dreams and schemes. And your unwillingness to fund Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, and Nick Hanauer's schemes, they're very angry now because the people responsible for organized opposition to their government-subsidized operations, well, they must target them with ads like this. Now, I know I've discussed this topic before, but it is getting crazier than ever as we go into the last month of the eternal election season. And listen, you'll never get an accurate assessment of the situation out of the Seattle Times or any of the traditional dying media in Washington state. I mean, those guys, if they've sold out their journalistic integrity long ago, and many of them really just want to be recipients of the grift themselves. So there's no way they're ever going to tell the truth, never, or anything even close to it. In fact, if you want to see the spokespersons for the big government grifting operations, just tune in to whatever's left of the legacy media. And I think it's also helpful when you see these ads in opposition to cutting the taxes and the Vote Yes, Pay Less campaign. They send out these flyers, and you should actually keep track of all the organizations that claim that they're in opposition to these tax cuts. These are the exact same groups that sold their souls long ago for a promised grant and those government bribes, paid for with tax dollars, of course. And this is why they want to make you pay more for everything, so that then these groups can get their basically piece of the tax grifting kickback scheme as well. So listen, if these programs are so awesome and these billionaires love them so much, why don't they kick their cash into the kitty and then fund it themselves? And the answer is obvious. They don't do this because they want to spend their money on other things like big sailboats. I mean, it's just like you and I. And I really can't blame them for this. They aren't stupid people, and they know government would squander their money in an instant. So, even for billionaires. So, they basically want government to squander our money instead, the regular taxpayers' money. However, I do believe that they should be called out for their hypocrisy and greed when it comes to hurting you and I and everyone else in our state just to fund these wasteful schemes when most people right now are struggling in this very difficult economy that we see around us. This is why I enthusiastically support all 4 initiatives, and I think the Vote Yes, Pay Less campaign makes sense. And the more I see the billionaires fund the opposition, the more you know that you should vote yes and convince everyone you know to do the same. I mean, the billionaires clearly control our politicians in the state, and they control the government agencies. But they can't control everyone, as much as they might want to try. So in the end, it still matters that you show up, that you push back, and you resist their schemes. I mean, don't fall for their silly fear-mongering or lawfare attacks on those who want to reduce your cost of living in our state. And this isn't hard to figure out, but it will require you to vote, just like all of us. And of course, promote the effort to others when you can. Because in the end, the future always belongs to those who show up.